Today I'm going to give you a quick, high-level overview of the Altmetric Explorer database. If you'd like to dive deeper and learn even more, consider signing up for one of our monthly webinars. You'll find the link to sign up in the video description. Okay, so first let's go over some basic navigation. When you log into Altmetric Explorer, you'll find yourself on the Highlights tab. But as you can see, we have a number of other tabs as well: Research Outputs, Timeline, Demographics, Mentions, Mention Sources, and Journals. So we'll talk about these in more detail in just a bit. Right now, we're exploring data for all research outputs from my institution, which is Lilliput University. On the left-hand side, we have some icons. So here's this compass icon. So clicking on this will always take you back to your default homepage in Altmetric Explorer, which is the Highlights tab, and it's going to clear out any sort of search filters you may have set. Below that, we have our Saved Searches section. So clicking on this button will take you to your saved searches. We're not going to talk much about saving searches today, but if you'd like to learn more about that, definitely check out the Save Searches video. Then we have our My Institution icon. So clicking on this will take you to your authors and departments at your institution. You might not see this wrench, which is just our administrators panel. So no worries if you don't see that. That just means you don't have administrator access at your institution. Then down here at the bottom, we just have some different sections like Help, Account Settings, and Signing Out of Altmetric Explorer. All right, going back up to the top. So before I go into each of these tabs, I'm first going to talk about a couple ways you can craft a search strategy. So you do have access to explore the full Altmetric database of over 14 million research outputs, or you can search specifically for your own institution's outputs. So we're going to start with the quick search, which is located in the upper right-hand corner. So if I click into the quick search box, I'm going to start typing in the name of an author at my institution that I'm interested in searching today. So starting to type in the name Jones. Some suggestions will start to auto-populate, and I can see my third option down here is verified authors from Lilliput University, and there we have India Jones from the School of Medicine and Medical Science. So that's the author I'm interested in, so I'm going to click on her name. And I'll be taken back to my Highlights tab, and I can see my data has changed, my numbers have changed. So now I'm exploring data for all research outputs from Lilliput University by the author India Jones. Another way to search for an author or a department at my institution is by clicking on this building icon over here, which will take me to my institution. So I can see here I have authors and departments. So authors is just organized alphabetically. So to find India Jones, I'm just going to go to the letter J. And there we have it. So this is just one other way to search for an author. Going over to my departments, here I can see my department hierarchy where we have the Department of Humanities, but more specifically we have the School of Social Sciences, similarly the Department of Life Sciences, and more specifically the School of Medicine, the School of Natural Sciences. So I can just view the results for any of these departments by clicking on this button. Going back to the main page, the Highlights tab. So another way to search Altmetric Explorer is through the advanced search. So up at the top, we have this blue Edit Search button. So if I click that, I'll be taken into my advanced search. So you can see we have a lot of different ways that we can search Altmetric Explorer. So today we're really just going to focus on the My Institution section over here, but definitely encourage you to play around with all these different ways you can search Altmetric Explorer. I will point out up here in the right-hand corner, we have these two tick boxes. So right now we're looking at my institution only. So clicking this box, you'll only be searching your institution's research outputs. But if you do want to explore the full Altmetric database of over 14 million research outputs, you're going to want to check this box. But we're going to keep it at my institution today. All right, so to search for an author at my institution, all I have to do is start typing in a name, just like we did in the quick search. So there we have India Jones. And we can do the same for a department. Just start typing in the name of a department. And there we have the School of Medicine and Medical Science. So we'll stick with our India Jones example. We're not going to apply any other filters today. And down in the lower right-hand corner, we're going to click Run Search. All right, so now we have our search strategy crafted, and we can begin to dig into the attention by using the tabs located at the top of the screen. So we'll start with the Highlights tab. So a summary of outputs and attention is located in the Highlights tab. So all these numbers will change as you edit your search strategies. So let's start with total mentions. So the total mentions is just the total of all mention types. So the total of Twitter mentions, news mentions, policy mentions, etc. Outputs with attention. So this is the number of outputs tracked by Altmetric that have some form of attention. And then our total outputs tracked is the overall number of outputs tracked, but not all of those are going to have attention. So that's the discrepancy between these two numbers here. So this tab is providing at-a-glance information, bringing interesting attention to the forefront. So it's divided into these different data blocks with some colorful visualizations. At the top, we have our attention breakdown. So this is a quick and easy place to go when you need those high-level summary numbers. So if I hover over any of these blocks here, some information will pop out for me here. So for example, for India Jones, I can see that 84% of this attention to her research outputs is coming from social media. I can hover over the red to find out news and blogs, and so on and so forth down the line. Scrolling down a bit, so we also have our top outputs, so our top 5 outputs sorted by Altmetric attention score, most mentioned by, so these are the sources of attention that are mentioning India Jones's research most frequently. And as you can see, if I want to explore these data in more detail, all I have to do is actually click these links down here at the bottom. I have my top journals and collections, top affiliations and subject areas. Down further, we have some curated latest news highlights and latest mentions, as well as attention by region or by country, and the distribution of Altmetric attention scores. All right, so that's a quick overview of the Highlights tab. Let's go on over to the Research Outputs tab. So the Research Outputs tab is a great place to start browsing attention. So it's going to allow you to explore outputs one at a time, whereas you'll see some of these other tabs will present you with more aggregated data. So right now, we're defaulted to sorting by the highest Altmetric attention score first, but clicking this drop-down, you can see you can sort this list in many, many different ways. So we could sort by publication dates, look at the newest publications or oldest publications first. We can sort by source type, and we can also sort by the number of mentions in a certain time frame. So for example, if I wanted to know which of India Jones's research has received the most news attention, I could just sort by news stories, and now my list will change, and I can see those research outputs with the most news attention will float up to the top. And so with any of these colorful donuts and those titles of those research outputs, if I click on them, it'll take me to my Altmetric details page where I can explore that attention in detail. So if I wanted to see those news outlets that are mentioning this research, I can just click on that news tab, and there we go. We can see those news outlets, and if I click on these, I'll actually be taken to that news article to explore that even further. So you can play around with all these different tabs and those mentions up there. So I'm going to X out of here. All right, so also the default view is going to be viewing these results as a grid, but I can also view these results as a list as well. So let me click on that and show you what that looks like. All right, so now over here on the right, we have a little bit more information about each of these research outputs. We have the author at my institution, so every one of these is going to have India Jones as an author, but we also have the departments at my institution in which this paper is affiliated with. We also have other affiliations of other authors on this paper and the subject areas in which this paper is classified as. I'll also point out that for each of the tabs that we're going to go into today, you can export the data as a CSV. So I think the Research Outputs tab has a really nice export, so you can definitely try that out. Also, you'll see on every single page a Save Search button. So if at any point in time you want to save that search to revisit later over here on the left-hand side, your Save Searches section, you can just click that button and it will save your search. All right, let's go over to the Timeline tab. All right, so the Timeline tab is the place to start when you would like to assess trends in attention over time. So for any search query, the Timeline tab lets you view all of those mentions over time and filter by specific attention source types. So if I just wanted to look at news, for example, I could click news, or if I just want to look at blogs, I can view those blocks individually. So let's go back to news, for example. So right now I'm looking at all time. I can zoom to the last year in attention, or 6 months, 3 months, etc. Or down here at the bottom, I actually have this scroll bar where I can choose a very specific point in time that I would like to look at. But let's go back to all time. And so I can view source types one by one, but I can actually also create my own personalized stacked bar graphs as well. So if I hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC, so holding down one of those buttons, I can now create these stacked bar graphs of those source types that I am most interested in. And I see this spike in attention. So if I wanted to know, well, that those mentions from November 2016, those 20 news mentions, 3 blog mentions, and 4 patent mentions, well, what were those? If I want to dig into those in more detail, all I have to do is actually click this bar in the graph, And I'll be taken to my Mentions tab, where now I can explore all of those mentions in detail. All right, but let's keep going in order. So that's the Timeline tab. So I'm going to go to my Demographics tab next. So in the Demographics tab, I can see these heat maps of geolocations for 4 different attention sources, so Twitter, Facebook, news, and policy. So we're looking at Twitter right now in this map. So each map shows the spread of attention around the world applied for any search query that I run. So if I hover over any of the countries in this map, I'll see the total number of tweets and the number of unique tweeters. So this, if I hover over the United States, I see there's 282 total tweets and from 219 unique Twitter users. And up here at the top, I have kind of that summary level information. So I can do that for any of these tabs up here at the top. Over on the right-hand side, we're going to have our corresponding data table as well. So if I clicked on the United States in this data table, or if I clicked on the country in the map, I will then be taken over again to my Mentions tab, where I can explore those mentions in detail. Okay, and so that brings me to my Mentions tab. So the Mentions tab is a powerful tool, and you'll often find yourself redirected here to dig deeper, as we've already seen. So on the Mentions tab, I can view all of the individual mentions across all attention sources. Additionally, I can also drill into specific time periods. So here I can put in a specific time to show mentions between certain dates. And I can also show mentions from a particular country or countries as well. So in this search, if I wanted to also add in maybe the United Kingdom, for example, I could also view all news stories from the United Kingdom. But let's reset my search and start with a clean slate here. So up in the left-hand area of this search bar, if I hover over Add Source, so here's where I can see where I can view a particular source of attention at a time. It defaults to viewing all attention sources, but perhaps I just want to view news stories, for example. So let's just view news stories. And now I will see the mentions in reverse chronological order here. And this is a good time to draw your attention to these little blue tick boxes here. So anything with a little blue tick mark, so this is a verified research output of my institution, of Lilliput University. So in the Mentions tab, you'll also be able to see other research outputs that are mentioned in news stories or policy documents, for example. So if I click Show 74 More, I can see all of the research outputs that are mentioned and cited in this particular news story from environmental health perspectives. So I have 3 blue ticks. So this means that these 3 are all affiliated with my institution, but I can also see all of these other research outputs that are not affiliated with my institution. All right, going back up, let's reset my search again. We can also type in into the search bar a very specific attention source we might be interested in. So we don't have to just look at the high level of news or blogs, for example. We can also just type in a news source we're interested in. So maybe New York Times. If I just start typing that in, here we go. We have news outlet New York Times. Maybe I also want to search for BBC News. And so I can craft a very specific search strategy for those news outlets or blogs or Twitter accounts that I am interested in. So maybe I also want to put in a Twitter account here, maybe Altmetric. Then I could put in that Twitter user, Altmetric. And then maybe at this point I'd want to save my search so I can revisit this search strategy later. All right, so that's a very quick overview of the Mentions tab. Let's move on to our Mention Sources tab. So the Mention Sources tab makes it quick and easy to see exactly which sources and people have mentioned your research the most. So we can also perform these searches for content that isn't your own to see how you compare to your peers in other organizations, or just to get a general idea of who is talking about what in a field. So it's a really powerful tool for anyone who frequently uses altmetric data to analyze the audiences of their research, or to assess their own outreach efforts, or help answer questions like, well, who are the most influential tweeters or bloggers in a particular field, or which policy sources are using our research the most. So you can see that the search bar up here looks very similar to our Mentions tab. So if I wanted to just view news outlets, again, for example, click Apply. So now I will see The Conversation has mentioned India Jones's research 6 times. I could show those recent mentions by clicking this little caret here, or I could view all mentions from The Conversation, which would then redirect me back to the Mentions tab to explore those in detail. detail. But let's show another example here. Maybe I just want to look at Twitter attention and who's tweeting about India Jones research the most. So here I see these Twitter handles that have 61 mentions of her research, and this person has over 3,300 followers. Again, I could show those recent tweets or view all mentions. And I will note up in the right-hand corner here, we have a sort by option. So this is for Twitter. We can sort by the total mention count or the Twitter follower count. So there we have it toggled to sort by Twitter follower count. All right, so let's move on to our final tab, the Journals tab. So the Journals tab is a comparison table that displays all the total mention counts for different altmetric attention sources aggregated by journal. So the default sorting is by the number of mentioned research outputs in my search. But if I wanted to sort by any of these columns, all I have to do is just click on that column header, and then my results will sort accordingly. So within this table, you can easily see which journals receive attention across specific sources. All right, so that is your very quick overview of Altmetric Explorer for institutions. Remember, if you'd like to learn more, consider attending one of our monthly introductory webinars. The registration link is in the video description, but you can also check out our other videos as well. So a good next step might be watching our video on saving searches, creating alerts, and sharing reports, which is also linked in the video description. All right, thanks for watching.